The laughter stopped the moment the black limousine rolled through the gates. Less than 30 seconds earlier, 5 people had been standing around a crying woman beside the swimming pool, laughing while her belongings floated in the water. Her handbag, her shoes, a small notebook, even a framed photograph she carried everywhere. Nobody had expected the owner of the estate to return that afternoon, especially not him. The rear door of the limousine opened. A polished black shoe touched the driveway, then another. And when Lucien Vere stepped out, every employee on the terrace went silent. Lucien didn't shout. He didn't ask what had happened. He simply looked across the garden at the woman kneeling beside the pool, desperately reaching for the photograph before the water destroyed it. Then he looked at the people laughing behind her. His expression changed. He removed his phone from his pocket, made one call, and said 6 words that would destroy an entire circle of arrogance before dinner. Fire every one of them. Immediately. But the strangest part wasn't that Lucien defended the woman. It was why. Because the plus-size nanny those people had spent months mocking was hiding something none of them knew. She wasn't staying in that mansion because she needed Lucien Vere's money. She was staying because his 8-year-old daughter had stopped speaking after losing her mother. And somehow, when expensive specialists, private tutors, and highly recommended caregivers had all failed to reach the child, this quiet nanny had done what nobody else could. She had made the little girl laugh again. If you enjoy emotional stories where people discover too late that they judged the wrong person, subscribe to the channel and stay with this one, because what happened beside that swimming pool was only the beginning. 3 months earlier, Embarrass Quell stood outside the gates of Vere House, clutching a folder against her chest. She was 31, experienced, qualified, and nervous. Not because she lacked confidence in her work, because Vere House was unlike anywhere she had worked before. The estate occupied nearly 20 acres outside the coastal city of Avenir. Stone fountains lined the driveway. Security cameras followed every approaching vehicle. 2 guards checked Embarrass's identification before allowing her inside. She had been interviewed twice already. Today was the final stage. A household administrator led her through enormous doors into a marble entrance hall. Mr. Vere is away on business, the administrator explained. You'll meet Mrs. Cressane, his mother, his aunt. Embarrass nodded. She already knew the basics. Lucien Vere was 39, widowed, 1 daughter, Eloane, 8 years old. Publicly, Lucien owned a network of shipping terminals, private security companies, and luxury properties. Privately, rumors surrounding the Vere family went much further. Nobody wrote those rumors in newspapers. Nobody needed to. The name itself was enough. Mafia. That was why Embarrass almost declined the interview. Then she read about Eloane. The girl's mother, Sarelle, had died in an accident 14 months earlier. Afterward, Eloane changed. She stopped playing piano, stopped attending birthday parties, barely spoke outside a handful of words. 3 nannies had left within 1 year. The 4th lasted 11 days. Embarrass specialized in children experiencing grief and major family transitions. She had worked in residential childcare before becoming a private nanny. Still, when Lucien's household contacted her, she asked herself the obvious question. Was the money worth entering the home of a feared man? Then the agency told her something unusual. Lucien had rejected every applicant who focused primarily on salary, prestige, travel, or accommodation. He wanted someone who understood his daughter. That intrigued Embarrass. She entered the sitting room. 4 women were waiting. The first was Veressa Cressane, Lucien's aunt. Elegant, silver-haired, observant. Beside her sat the estate administrator. The third was a child psychologist. And the 4th? A woman in an immaculate cream suit who looked Embarrass up and down before she had even taken her seat. Embarrass Quell? Yes. The woman smiled without warmth. I'm Solène Mar. Embarrass recognized the surname. Mar Hospitality, one of the companies that organize social events for Vere House. Solène wasn't there to interview her. She was waiting for Veressa, but she made no attempt to hide her curiosity. Veressa began. Why private childcare? Because children behave differently when they're comfortable enough to stop performing for adults. The psychologist leaned forward. What would you do if Aloan refused to speak to you? Nothing. Solen looked surprised. Nothing. Ambrissa turned toward her. I wasn't aware you were interviewing me. Veressa almost smiled. Solen's expression tightened. The psychologist continued. What do you mean by nothing? I wouldn't force conversation. I'd establish routine. Be predictable. Give her choices where possible. And let her decide when I'm safe enough to speak to. Veressa studied her. What if that takes months? Then it takes months. What if it never happens? Speaking to me isn't the objective. Aloan feeling secure is. That answer changed the room. 20 minutes later, Veressa asked Ambrissa to meet the child. Aloan sat in the conservatory drawing. She didn't look up. Ambrissa entered alone. There were 2 chairs. She ignored both. Instead, she sat on the floor several feet away. Aloan continued drawing. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Ambrissa opened her handbag and removed a paperback. She began reading silently. Aloan eventually looked at her. Ambrissa didn't react. Another 5 minutes. Aloan spoke. You're supposed to ask me questions. Ambrissa looked up. Am I? They always do. That sounds exhausting. Aloan stared at her. What are you reading? A mystery. Is it good? Not yet. Then why read it? I've already paid for it. Aloan's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. From behind the conservatory door, Veressa noticed. Ambrissa was hired that afternoon. She moved into the staff wing 2 days later. And that was when the trouble began. Their house employed nearly 30 people. Most were professional, kind, respectful, but a small group treated the estate like their personal kingdom. Solen visited constantly while coordinating Lucerin's business receptions. Her closest friend, Caldra Knoll, supervised guest services. The household's junior events coordinator, Desarin, followed them everywhere. 2 staff members, Orvental and Marek Sen, completed the circle. They were polished around Luceren, cruel when he wasn't there. Ambrissa noticed quickly, not because they confronted her immediately, because they whispered. The first comment came in the staff dining room. Ambrissa entered carrying tea. Solen looked at the chair beside her. Then at Ambrissa. I'm not sure that one is comfortable. Ambrissa stopped. What? Solen smiled. No reason. Desa laughed. Ambrissa understood. She simply chose another chair. A week later, Caldra held up a formal uniform the household had ordered for Ambrissa. Are you sure they measured correctly? Ambrissa took it from her. Yes. They had to use quite a lot of fabric. Ambrissa looked directly at her. Fortunately, Mr. Vare can afford it. One of the kitchen assistants laughed. Caldra's smile vanished. Ambrissa walked away. She had spent years hearing comments about her body from people who believed appearance was an invitation for commentary. She had learned something useful. Not every insult deserved an emotional performance. Sometimes dignity looked like refusing to participate. But Solen hated being ignored. So the comments became more deliberate. At a garden luncheon, she moved Ambrissa's chair away from the table and said there wasn't enough room. During a staff fitting, Desa deliberately brought Ambrissa a uniform several sizes too small, then pretended there had been a mistake. Orvin once photographed a tray of desserts and joked loudly that they should hide them before Ambrissa arrived. Ambrissa documented everything. Dates, times, witnesses. Not because she intended revenge, because she understood workplace bullying. Patterns mattered, but she did not tell Luceren. At first, she barely saw him. He traveled constantly. When he was home, his time belonged almost entirely to Aloan. The first time Luceren truly noticed Ambrissa was 3 weeks after she arrived. He returned from a meeting unexpectedly early. Music came from a kitchen. Not professional music. Terrible music. Someone was banging wooden spoons against pots. Luceren followed the sound. He stopped at the doorway. Aloan stood on a chair, wearing a paper chef's hat. Flour covered her nose. Ambrissa stood beside her stirring pancake batter. They were singing badly. Luceren stared. Aloan saw him. Papa. One word. But Luceren froze. His daughter had spoken to him spontaneously. Not because he asked a question. Not because a therapist encouraged her. She simply saw him and called him. Papa. Luceren entered slowly. What is happening? Aloan held up a wooden spoon. We're making dinner. Luceren looked at the batter. That is breakfast. Not anymore. Ambrissa hid a smile. Aloan pointed toward another bowl. You have to help. Lucien looked at Ambrissa. She shrugged. Apparently you do. The most feared man in Ave Noir rolled up the sleeves of a suit worth more than some people's cars and made pancakes. They were terrible. Aloan ate two, then laughed when Lucien burned the third. Lucien stopped moving. That sound. He hadn't heard his daughter laugh like that since Sarel died. He looked at Ambrissa. She wasn't watching him. She was wiping flour from Aloan's cheek. That evening, after Aloan slept, Lucien found Ambrissa in the library. Ow! She looked up. How what? You got her talking. I didn't. I heard her. She got herself talking. Lucien frowned. That's semantics. No. Ambrissa closed her book. Everyone keeps treating her silence like something broken. She lost her mother. She knows everyone is waiting for the old Aloan to come back. Lucien's face changed. Ambrissa continued gently. Maybe she needs permission to become whoever she is now. Lucien sat opposite her. Nobody spoke to him this way. People offered solutions, diagnoses, strategies. Ambrissa offered patience. What do I do? It was one of the hardest questions Lucien had ever asked. Ambrissa answered simply. Be her father. I am. I know. But stop measuring every good day against who she was before. Lucien looked toward the hallway. Let her have new good days. He remembered that sentence. Over the next 2 months, Aloan changed. Slowly. Not magically. Some mornings she refused breakfast. Some nights she woke crying. Certain songs still made her leave rooms. But there were good days. She returned to school part-time. Started painting. Invited one classmate home. And she developed an attachment to Ambrissa that everyone noticed. Brissa. Aloan shouted whenever she couldn't find her. Solène hated it. Not because she cared about childcare. Because Ambrissa had become important. And importance inside their house meant proximity to Lucien. Solène had spent years positioning herself within the family social circle. She understood influence. She understood appearances. She did not understand why a nanny she considered beneath her had become someone Lucien actually listened to. One afternoon, Solène found Ambrissa arranging books in Aloan's room. You're getting comfortable. Ambrissa didn't turn. I work here. For now. Ambrissa placed another book on the shelf. Was there something you needed? You know what people are saying? No. That you think you're part of the family. Ambrissa finally looked at her. Who says that? People. Which people? Solène paused. Ambrissa smiled faintly. That's usually what people means. Solène stepped closer. Don't misunderstand your position. My position is nanny. Exactly. Then we're in agreement. Solène's expression hardened. You're very confident. Is that a problem? For someone in your situation, perhaps. What situation? Solène's eyes moved deliberately over Ambrissa's body. The meaning was obvious. Ambrissa became still. Solène smiled. Some women need to understand what rooms they belong in. Ambrissa looked directly at her. I've spent my entire life in this body. You're going to have to work much harder if you want to make me ashamed of it. Solène's smile disappeared. Ambrissa walked past her. That should have ended it. Instead, it escalated. The opportunity came during Aloan's 9th birthday celebration. Lucien wanted something small. Aloan wanted a garden party with 12 classmates. Solène somehow transformed that into an event for nearly 80 guests. Florists arrived. Caterers. Musicians. Photographers. Ambrissa objected. This is too much. Solène ignored her. Aloan requested a party. She requested 12 children. Mr. Veyer's daughter cannot have a cheap little backyard gathering. This isn't about cheap. It's about what she can handle. Solène smiled. You're a nanny, and I'm responsible for her routine today. I'm responsible for this event. The disagreement reached Lucien. He sided with Ambrissa. Reduce the guest list. Solène stared. But 12 children. Immediate family. That's all. Solène looked toward Ambrissa. Lucien noticed the expression. Is there a problem? No. There appears to be. Solène forced a smile. None. The party went ahead. For the first hour, it was wonderful. Aloan laughed with classmates. Painted ceramic animals. A magician performed. Lucien watched from the terrace. Then an unexpected business emergency pulled him away. "I'll be back in an hour," he told Aloan. She nodded. Ambrissa remained. As soon as Lucerin's vehicle disappeared, Solen's friends arrived. Not 80, but enough. Kaldra, Desa, Orvin, Marek. They opened champagne near the pool. Ambrissa approached. Aloan's party isn't finished. Solen waved dismissively. "We're not disturbing anyone. You've invited adults she doesn't know. They're staff. Then they can celebrate later." Solen's eyes narrowed. "Go watch the children." "I am." Ambrissa turned. Behind her, Desa whispered something. They laughed. Ambrissa ignored it. 20 minutes later, Aloan went inside with Veressa to open presents. Ambrissa began collecting painting supplies. Then, she heard Solen. "Careful with that table." Ambrissa looked over. Solen was speaking to Orvin while looking directly at her. "We don't want anything collapsing." Laughter. Ambrissa straightened. "Enough." The group became quiet. She walked toward them. "I've ignored the comments for weeks. I've ignored the jokes. I've ignored you interfering with my uniforms and moving chairs. But you're doing this at a child's birthday party." Solen laughed. "Doing what?" "You know exactly what." "Are you offended?" "No." "Then what's the problem?" "The problem is that you're adults behaving like schoolyard bullies." Orvin chuckled. Solen stepped closer. "Bullies?" "Yes." "You think you're better than us?" "No." Ambrissa's voice remained steady. "I think you're old enough to know better." That landed. Kaldra stopped smiling. Solen didn't. "Maybe we're simply tired of watching you parade around this house, as though you belong here." "I work here." "You babysit." "I care for Aloan." "Same thing." "No." Solen looked at the handbag hanging from Ambrissa's shoulder. "What's so precious in there anyway?" Before Ambrissa understood what she was doing, Solen grabbed the bag. "Give me that." "Relax." Solen. She tossed it to Desa. Desa laughed and passed it to Orvin. Ambrissa's face changed. "Give me my bag." Orvin held it above his head. "Come get it." "This isn't funny." Marek laughed. Then the bag slipped. Or perhaps someone threw it. Ambrissa never knew. It landed in the swimming pool. The contents spilled out. Wallet, notebook, keys, shoes she had changed out of earlier, and a framed photograph. Ambrissa gasped. "No!" She rushed to the edge. The photograph floated face down. She knelt. Reached. Couldn't reach it. Behind her, somebody laughed. Ambrissa stepped into the shallow edge, fully clothed. Grabbed the frame. Water had already seeped beneath the glass. Her hands trembled. The picture showed Ambrissa at 16 beside her younger sister, Livia. Livia had died at 19 from an undiagnosed heart condition. It was the last photograph Ambrissa had of them together. She pressed the frame against her chest. Solen saw the tears. For 1 second, guilt appeared, then disappeared. Oh, don't be dramatic. That was the moment the limousine entered the gates. Nobody noticed at first, except Marek. His face drained. Solen. She ignored him. Solen. What? He pointed. Luceren was already walking toward them. His jacket remained buttoned. His expression unreadable. Behind him came Evren Say, now overseeing their corporate security after years of service elsewhere, and 2 senior household administrators. Luceren looked at Ambrissa, soaked, kneeling beside the pool, holding a wet photograph. Then he looked at the floating handbag. The group. The laughter that had vanished. What happened? Nobody answered. Ambrissa stood. Mr. Vare. Solen interrupted. It was an accident. Luceren looked at her. What was? The bag. Whose? Silence. Ambrissa's? Yes. How did it enter the pool? Desa looked down. Orvin suddenly found the paving fascinating. Luceren turned to Ambrissa. Was it an accident? She hesitated. That hesitation answered him. Luceren's jaw tightened. What happened? Ambrissa didn't want Aloan's birthday destroyed. Not today. Luceren stared at her. Excuse me? It's Aloan's birthday. We can deal with this later. Solen relaxed. Mistake. She smiled. Exactly. She's overreacting. Luceren looked at her. Then back at Ambrissa. Overreacting to what? Solen realized too late. Ambrissa closed her eyes. Luceren noticed the damaged photograph. Who is that? My sister. Where is she? Ambrissa swallowed. She died. Luceren looked at the photograph again. Then at Solen. What did you do? It was a joke. Nobody moved. Lucerin's voice became quieter. What was funny? Solène opened her mouth. Nothing came. Luceren turned toward the others. Someone explained the joke. Calder spoke first. We were teasing. About. Silence. Luceren waited. Desa whispered. Her appearance. Luceren looked at Ambrissa. Then he understood. Not everything. Enough. How long? Ambrissa didn't answer. How long has this been happening? Several weeks. Luceren turned toward his household administrator. You knew? No, sir. Ambrissa spoke. I didn't report it. Why? I thought I could handle it. Luceren looked at the 5 people. Apparently, they interpreted restraint as permission. Solène stepped forward. Luceren, this is being blown completely out of proportion. He looked at her. You threw an employee's personal belongings into my pool. I didn't throw. You participated. It was harmless. Luceren glanced at Ambrissa's tears. No, it wasn't. Solène lowered her voice. You're going to make a scene over a nanny? That sentence ended everything. Luceren removed his phone. Called the estate's director of operations. When the man answered, Luceren spoke calmly. Terminate Solène Mar's access to every Vare property. Solène froze. Luceren. He continued. Caldranol, Desa Rin, Orvental, and Marexen are dismissed effective immediately. Everyone stared. Fire every one of them. Solène stepped forward. You can't be serious. Luceren ended the call. I am. Over her. No. Luceren's voice remained controlled. Over your behavior. She's staff. So are you. Solène's face went pale. Luceren continued. And if you believe someone's job title determines whether they deserve dignity, you have no place representing anything with my name attached to it. Nobody spoke. Security did not drag anyone away. There were no threats. No violence. They were simply instructed to collect personal belongings under supervision and leave. That somehow humiliated Solène more. Ambrissa watched. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt exhausted. Luceren turned toward her. Are you hurt? No. The photograph? I don't know. Veressa approached with Aloan. The child saw Ambrissa's wet clothes. What happened? Ambrissa immediately smiled. Nothing you need to worry about. Aloan looked at the adults leaving. Then at Luceren. Did something bad happen? Luceren crouched. Some adults forgot how people in this house are expected to treat each other. Did Brissa do something? No. He looked at Ambrissa. Brissa did nothing wrong. Aloan walked over and hugged her. Ambrissa closed her eyes. The party continued. Not because the incident didn't matter. Because Ambrissa refused to let cruelty become Aloan's birthday memory. That evening, after the final child left, Luceren found Ambrissa in the laundry room, drying the photograph. She had removed it from a frame. The image was damaged at one corner, but the faces remained. Luceren stood in the doorway. Your sister? Yes. What was her name? Livia. How old? 19. I'm sorry. Ambrissa nodded. He entered. Why didn't you tell me? About them? Yes. You have bigger problems. That wasn't your decision. She looked at him. Luceren softened the words. I mean, I employ them. What happens here is my responsibility. You didn't make them behave that way. No, but I created an environment where they thought they could hide it from me. Ambrissa considered that. You can't see everything. Apparently not. He sat. Why did you stay? Aloan. Only Aloan? Yes. The answer hit harder than he expected. Ambrissa continued. She was improving. I didn't want staff drama disrupting that. Luceren looked toward the photograph. You tolerated humiliation for my daughter? I tolerated foolish people. There's a difference. He almost smiled. Is there? Yes. She looked at him. They never determined my worth. So they couldn't take it away. Luceren stared. He'd spent his entire life building power partly because he believed dignity came from preventing anyone from challenging you. Ambrissa seemed to possess another kind. She didn't require their approval. But Luceren also knew resilience shouldn't become an excuse for allowing mistreatment. You should never have needed to endure it. No. And the next time anything happens in this house, you tell me. Ambrissa smiled. Hopefully there isn't a next time. There won't be. He sounded so certain she laughed. Luceren looked offended. Why are you laughing? You can't control every human being. I can make an impressive attempt. That is exactly what worries me. For the first time since returning home, Lucran laughed too. The dismissals created consequences beyond the estate. Solène claimed she had been unfairly treated. She told friends Ambrissa had manipulated Lucran. Rumors spread. Some people assumed Ambrissa and Lucran were secretly involved. Ambrissa hated that most. It suggested her professional value could only be explained through romantic attention. So she did something Lucran didn't expect. She resigned. He found the letter on his desk. No. Ambrissa stared. You haven't read it. I read the first sentence. You cannot reject a resignation like a restaurant order. I just did. Lucran. He looked up. It was the first time she used his first name. Neither mentioned it. Why? She sat. Because Alone is doing well. That is usually a reason to continue. And because I'm becoming the story. He understood. People are talking. Yes. Let them. Easy for you. That stopped him. Ambrissa continued. You've spent your whole life being discussed. You know how to ignore it. I don't want Alone hearing people say, I kept my job because her father favored me. Lucran's expression hardened. You kept your job because you're exceptional at it. I know. Then stay. She shook her head. Not like this. Lucran leaned back. What would make you stay? A professional childcare program. He frowned. What? Alone doesn't need one nanny forever. She needs a support system. Therapist. School counselor. Caregiver. Family. Clear boundaries. Lucran listened. Ambrissa had been thinking far beyond her own employment. She proposed restructuring Alone's care so no single person became indispensable. Lucran hated the idea emotionally. As a father, he understood it. What happens to you? I become household child development coordinator for 6 months. Then, we reassess. You planned all this? I planned things. I've noticed. He accepted. The change worked. Alone continued improving. Ambrissa trained 2 new caregivers, established routines, coordinated with school, and insisted Lucran take a larger role rather than outsourcing difficult emotional moments. One evening, Alone woke after a nightmare and called for Ambrissa. Ambrissa came to the doorway, then stopped. Lucran was already sitting beside the bed. Alone held his hand. Ambrissa quietly stepped away. That was success, not being needed forever. Helping a family need each other again. 6 months later, Ambrissa made another decision. She left their house. Alone cried. Lucran nearly argued. Ambrissa remained firm. I'm not disappearing. Alone wiped her eyes. Promise. Promise. Sunday pancakes? Once a month. Every Sunday. Negotiation isn't inherited from your father, is it? Lucran stood behind them. It absolutely is. They settled on twice monthly. Ambrissa used her savings to begin postgraduate training in child and family support. Lucran offered to pay. She refused. He offered again. She threatened to block his number. He stopped. Mostly. 2 years later, Ambrissa established a small training organization teaching domestic staff, caregivers, and private employers about child safeguarding, professional boundaries, grief-informed care, and workplace dignity. Lucran became its first corporate client. Not donor. Client. He paid the same rate as everyone else. Ambrissa insisted. Word spread. Hotels hired her. Private schools. Care agencies. Families. Her experience at their house became useful, but she never publicly named the people who humiliated her. When asked why, she said, the lesson matters more than the villains. Solène eventually apologized. Not publicly. Not dramatically. A letter arrived. It contained no excuses. Solène wrote that losing access to the Ver network had forced her to confront how much of her identity depended on making other people feel smaller. Ambrissa read the letter twice, then put it away. She didn't become Solène's friend. Forgiveness didn't require that, but she appreciated accountability. Years later, Eloane turned 16. Her birthday celebration took place in the same garden. No enormous guest list. No social spectacle. 20 friends. Music. Lanterns. Food. And pancakes. Because apparently pancakes had become tradition. Ambrissa arrived late. Eloane ran across the lawn. Brissa. She hugged her. Lucran approached. Gray had begun appearing at his temples. You're late. I have a life. Inconvenient. You should try one. I own several companies. That isn't a life. Eloan rolled her eyes. You two still argue exactly the same. Ambrissa smiled. Then she noticed something beside the pool. A framed photograph. Restored. Livia and Ambrissa. The damaged corner repaired professionally. Ambrissa froze. She looked at Lucran. You did this. Eloan. Eloan smiled. I found the original damage scan in the household archive. You kept the scan? Lucran shrugged. We document incidents. Ambrissa picked up the photograph. Her eyes filled. This time, nobody laughed. Eloan squeezed her hand. I wanted you to have it properly. Ambrissa hugged her. Lucran watched. He remembered the woman kneeling beside that same pool years earlier. Humiliated. Soaked. Trying to save a photograph while people treated her pain like entertainment. At the time, he thought firing them was the important decision. Years later, he understood something deeper. Removing cruel people was only the beginning. Building a culture where cruelty couldn't hide was harder. After the incident, their companies introduced confidential reporting systems. Managers received anti-harassment training. Domestic staff received written contracts and grievance procedures. Employees were evaluated not only on performance, but conduct toward colleagues. Lucran had once believed respect flowed downward from power. Ambrissa taught him that genuine respect had to move in every direction. Toward executives, toward cleaners, toward drivers, toward nannies, toward anyone whose work made another person's life possible. That evening, Lucran and Ambrissa stood near the pool after the teenagers moved inside. You know something? He said. That sentence usually worries me. I made a mistake that day. Ambrissa looked at him. Which one? When I fired them. She raised an eyebrow. You think you shouldn't have? No. I should have asked what was happening long before it reached that point. Ambrissa considered him. You didn't know. I should have built a system where I could know. She smiled. You eventually did. Because of you. Because of what happened. Same difference. No. She looked toward the house. I didn't change your companies. You chose to. Lucran recognized the argument. Years earlier, he had heard similar words from someone else. Opportunity wasn't accomplishment. Help wasn't ownership. People made their own choices. He nodded. Fine. Ambrissa smiled. That sounded painful. It was. Inside, Eloan called them. Pancakes. Lucran frowned. At a birthday party? Ambrissa walked toward the house. Tradition. You invented this tradition. And yet you're following me. Lucran sighed and followed. Nobody at the table that evening cared that Ambrissa was plus size. Not because her body had changed. It hadn't dramatically. Because it had never been the important thing about her. The people who mocked her had revealed their own character, not hers. Her body was simply the excuse they selected for cruelty. Years later, when Eloan told friends about the nanny who helped her through the worst period of her childhood, she never described Ambrissa by size. She said, she was the first adult who didn't treat me like I was broken. That was how Eloan remembered her. Lucran remembered something else. A woman standing in his library telling him, let her have new good days. That sentence had changed how he raised his daughter. And Ambrissa? She remembered the swimming pool. But not as the day she was humiliated. Eventually, she remembered it as the day everyone's character became impossible to hide. Solène showed who she was then. The others showed who they were. Lucran showed who he was. And Ambrissa discovered something about herself too. She could endure cruelty, but endurance wasn't always the goal. Sometimes strength meant documenting, reporting, setting boundaries, leaving, demanding better. And sometimes strength meant refusing to accept another person's shame as your own. The people beside that pool wanted Ambrissa to feel small. Instead, their behavior exposed how small their thinking had become. Lucran's phone call didn't give Ambrissa dignity. She already had it. His call simply made clear that the people who denied that dignity would no longer do so under his authority. That difference mattered. One autumn afternoon, years after Ambrissa left their house, she returned to speak at a training session for new household employees. 20 people sat in the estate conference room. Ran entered quietly at the back. Ambrissa didn't notice him. She spoke about workplace culture, about children watching how adults treat service workers, about how humiliation spreads, about how silence can accidentally protect people who mistreat others. Then someone asked, "What should you do if the person insulting you is more powerful?" Ambrissa paused. "First, protect yourself. Document what happens. Use whatever safe reporting systems exist. Find witnesses. And understand something important." The room became quiet. Someone having authority over your job does not give them authority over your worth. Ran leaned against the back wall. He remembered the pool, the wet photograph, the laughter, and the sentence that had made him angrier than almost anything else. She's staff. As if staff meant lesser. As if service erased humanity. As if money purchased permission to humiliate. Ran had spent years being called powerful. But Ambrissa had taught him that power revealed itself most clearly in how someone treated people who couldn't offer them status. After the session, he approached. "You become expensive." Ambrissa smiled. "You can afford it." "That sounds familiar." "It should." They laughed. Aloan appeared in the doorway. Now a young woman preparing for university. "Dinner." Ambrissa checked her watch. "I have another meeting." Aloan stared at her. "Brissa, that tone doesn't work anymore." "Pancakes." Ambrissa sighed. Ran smiled. "Negotiation. She definitely inherited it from you." They walked toward the kitchen. And for a moment, the enormous mansion didn't feel like the home of a mafia boss. It felt like what Ambrissa had always wanted it to become. A home where a grieving child could laugh. Where employees could speak. Where mistakes could be admitted. Where boundaries mattered. Where respect wasn't reserved for powerful people. The 5 people beside the swimming pool had believed Ambrissa was the easiest person to humiliate. A nanny. An employee. A woman whose appearance they thought gave them permission to make jokes. They were wrong about all 3 things. They mistook kindness for weakness, professionalism for submission, and silence for permission. Then Ran came home. One phone call ended their jobs. But the real victory happened afterward. Ambrissa didn't become powerful because a feared man defended her. She became influential because she took an ugly experience and built something useful from it. Aloan didn't heal because one nanny magically fixed grief. She healed because patient adults gave her safety, time, professional support, and permission to move forward without forgetting her mother. And Ran didn't become a better father because he could frighten people. He became better when he learned to listen. That was what remained long after the people who laughed beside the pool were gone. Not revenge. Change. And if this story kept you watching, subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories about unexpected courage, hidden strength, second chances, and the moments when people discover they judged the completely wrong person. Before you go, tell me in the comments which moment stayed with you most. Was it when Ambrissa refused to let weeks of cruel comments make her ashamed of herself? Was it the moment Ran returned unexpectedly and found her desperately trying to rescue the photograph of her late sister from the swimming pool? Was it when Lin dismissed her as just staff, only for Ran to make one call and say, "Fire every one of them"? Or was it years later, when Aloan restored the photograph and showed Ambrissa that the little girl she once helped through grief had grown into someone who understood exactly what that memory meant? If you enjoyed the story, like the video and share it with someone who believes respect should never depend on someone's job, money, appearance, or social position. Because the people beside that swimming pool thought they had humiliated the wrong nanny only because she happened to have the protection of a powerful mafia boss. But they were wrong about that too. They had humiliated the wrong woman because Ambrissa never needed their approval to know her value. And the phone call that changed everything didn't give her that value. It simply made sure the people who refused to recognize her humanity could no longer pretend their cruelty had no consequences.